A fierce storm suddenly struck, sinking the large ship along with all its passengers. In the vast, boundless ocean, only one man miraculously survived. By some mysterious grace, he clung to the wreckage of the ship and drifted to a deserted island. When he regained consciousness, he found himself lying on the damp, cold sand, surrounded only by silence, with nothing but the sound of crashing waves and a forest in the distance. Dazed and exhausted, he lifted his eyes toward the sky, his heart filled with gratitude for still being alive. Immediately, he began to pray earnestly, begging God to send help, for he knew he could not survive long on the barren island on his own. Yet day after day passed and no ship appeared. He continued to pray every morning, longing for a miracle, but all he received was silence. As time went by, his despair grew heavier. The man had to accept the reality that he might be forced to live alone on this island for a very long time, perhaps even for the rest of his life. He began to adapt, collecting pieces of wood washed ashore from the wreck, gathering leaves and branches to build himself a small hut. It became his only shelter, protecting him from rain, wind, and wild animals. Inside, he carefully stored a few items he had salvaged from the ship, treating them as his precious possessions. In the midst of the wilderness, thanks to coconuts and fish caught near the shore, he slowly learned how to sustain himself. Each day, he worked tirelessly, gathering firewood, cutting coconuts, strengthening his hut piece by piece. Though his life was lonely and meager, the hut gave him a glimmer of hope, a symbol that he still had a place of refuge to cling to. Yet fate seemed determined to test him further. One day, after lighting a fire to cook and leaving in search of more food, he returned to find a heartbreaking sight. His hut, the fruit of his labor, and his only hope, engulfed in flames. The fire devoured everything he had gathered, reducing it all to ashes. Standing before the ruin, the man collapsed in despair. After enduring so much hardship, to lose even his only shelter made him feel abandoned and betrayed. In his anguish, he lifted his face toward heaven, crying out in bitterness, "Lord, I begged you to help me, yet you never answered. This hut was all I had left, and still you took it away. How could you be so cruel?" Tormented by disappointment, he lost all faith. That night, he sat on the cold sand, weeping and lamenting, accusing God until exhaustion overcame him, and he fell asleep in hopelessness. The next morning, as the first light of dawn spread across the horizon, the man still lay on the beach, his eyes heavy from a night of despair. Suddenly, he was startled by a strange sound, the blast of a ship's horn and voices echoing across the sea. In disbelief, he looked up to see a large ship approaching the island. He rubbed his eyes repeatedly to make sure he wasn't dreaming. His heart raced, pounding with shock and joy. At last, after endless days of waiting, real hope had arrived. Overcome with emotion, he ran to the water's edge, waving his arms in overwhelming relief. When the sailors pulled him aboard, he could hardly believe this miracle had truly happened. Questions flooded his heart, and unable to contain them, he turned to the captain and asked, "Sir, how did you know I was stranded on this island? This place is remote and desolate. I have been praying for days, but I had no way to signal anyone." The captain smiled kindly and replied, "We saw smoke rising from the island. The signal was clear. It told us for certain that someone was here and needed help. That is why we came." Hearing this, the man was stunned. His heart seemed to stop for a moment. He remembered the fire from the night before, when his hut, his only possession, his only shelter, had been completely consumed by flames. He had mourned it, cursed it, and even accused God of cruelty. Yet now he realized the truth. That very fire, the disaster he had thought was his greatest misfortune, had become the signal that saved his life. He fell silent, tears streaming down his face. In that moment, he felt deeply that God had been watching over him all along. What he had seen as a loss was in fact the means of opening a path to salvation. The fire destroyed his fragile hut, but it marked the beginning of freedom, rescuing him from loneliness and despair. This story carries a profound lesson for us all. In life, we often plan carefully for ourselves, longing for stability, wishing for ease. Yet reality is full of storms and unpredictability, and things rarely go exactly as we hope. When we face failure or loss, we tend to see only the pain before us, falling easily into despair, blaming fate, or even losing faith in God and in ourselves. But human understanding is limited. We cannot see the whole picture. Sometimes, what seems like a tragedy is actually the preparation for something greater. Just like that fire, which appeared to be calamity but turned out to be the very signal of deliverance. The truth is, God's plan is always larger, wiser, and better than our own. The deeper message of this story is clear. Hold on to faith, be patient, and keep persevering. Whatever the circumstances, do not be discouraged when personal plans collapse. It may simply be God's way of guiding us towards something better and more meaningful. We must learn to trust, doing our best while entrusting the outcome to His divine will. The man in the story learned this lesson. His tears of complaint turned into tears of gratitude. From despair, he found faith again. And so it is with us. Every trial, no matter how painful, may hold within it a greater plan waiting to unfold.